In this video, you'll learn how to create a simple yet intuitive and user-friendly registration form in Flutter. You'll also learn how to check for the correct email format as well as make the password meet certain criteria. Hey there! In the last video of the Flutter's Awesome Notes application, we integrated Firebase to our Flutter application, and in this video we are going to create these two screens for registering and signing in the user to our application. Actually, these are not two screens. We use one screen, but by using this button, we toggle between them. So let's get started. First of all, as you can see, we use three text fields for three different inputs, and we can reuse a text field that we used in the new tag dialog in here too. So first of all, I have to go to the new tag dialog widget, and in here is the text field that we want to reuse. So I have to extract this first of all and call it, let's say, note form field. And now let's see what we can extract. So first of all, we have to name this tag controller to a more generic name. Let's call it controller. And after that, let's remove the tag key because we can pass the key through this field, and also replace this with key. And other thing that we have to accept through the constructor is the hint text. So we have to copy this declaration for the hint text and then come in here and just declare it in here and accept it in the constructor. So I'll say this dot hint text. So I'll just replace this specific text with hint text that is coming from the constructor, and I have to just assign it in here too. So I'll say hint text and just paste the text that we used before, and instead of the tag key we can use the key, and also we can accept the validator too. So let me see what is the definition for the validator. So it is something like this. So we have to copy this and bring it in here, and then this dot validator, and also let me just copy all of this and accept it in here, okay, like this. And then we can remove all of this and just replace it with validator from the constructor. And the same thing for the unchanged. I'll just copy this and then come in here, final, and then this dot unchanged, and let me just copy this one and bring it in here. Now we can remove this and replace it with unchanged. Excellent. And also we have to accept the autofocus. So I'll just copy this and bring it in here like this, and just assign it autofocus equals to false. Give it a default value as given it in here. So now just replace this with autofocus and give the autofocus a value of true in here. Amazing. Now I can move this to its own file. So let me create a new file in the widgets folder called note form field.dart and paste it in here, and just import the material library and also the constants file. Now we're good to go in here, and we have to import it in here too. Amazing. Now we have this generic note form field, and now let's move on with the design. So I'll bring the design in here so we can see that, and I will create a new page for this registration. So I'll first of all create a new file and call it registration page.dart, and then I'll create a stateful widget called registration page, and in here I will have a scaffold, and then I don't want an app bar, just the body, and the body should have the safe area as the parent, and inside that I want a column. Okay, and then children, and let me just make a room for this. So first of all, we have to have a text saying register, and then another text saying in order to sync your notes to the cloud, you have to register or sign into the app. Amazing. And then let me just place a sized box of height 16, and also let me give it another sized box in here too, but this time with a height of 48, and then we will have the note form field, and we have to import it, and then we have to give it some parameters. I think the controller is required, but we have to make it not required. So this is complaining of can't have a value of null. Okay, so we can make this nullable. Excellent. And then for now I think this is fine, but let me just give it a hint text of, instead of username, let's say a more descriptive full name. And then let me copy this and make one for the email address, and then another for the password. Amazing. And then let's just copy this size box and place it in here, but with a height of just 8. And let me copy this one again and place it in here too. Interesting. So these 3 fields are done, and then we have to have a button, and we already have this button, and we used this in the new tag dialog, and I think that was note button or something. Okay, note button, yeah. So we'll give it a label, create my account, and then give it an onPressed function, for now empty. And then we have to have another space. Let me copy this one and give it 32 instead of 48. And then we have to have a row for these 2 lines and the text in the middle. So I'll say a row of children, and first of all, to represent this line we'll use the divider widget, and then we have to duplicate this, and between them we'll place a text saying or register with, and we'll place some spacing around the text. So I'll just wrap this with a padding and give it a symmetric of only horizontal and give it 16. Interesting. And I'll copy the sized box in here and place it after the row, and after that we have to place these 2 buttons. So I'll just use the note icon button. Okay, so I'll use the icon font awesome icons dot Google, and we have to import the font awesome, and then as the onPressed we'll just leave it empty for now. And this note icon button is going to be a note icon button outlined, and I have to duplicate this one and then use the Facebook for the second one, and then let me wrap this with a row and just place a sized box of width 16. Okay, we don't want this one. And then we have to again copy this sized box and place it after the row. Okay, in here, and then we can create this one like in different ways. One could be like a text and then another text, or a text button, but I want to use the text.rich widget. So I'll say text.rich, and it needs a text span, so I'll say text span. Okay, and then as the first text we will say already have an account, and then give it a space And after that, we have the children, and this takes a list of text spans, so we can create like basically like kind of one widget, but we can style the text differently. So for example, this text can have one style, and then we can introduce different text in the children. For example, I will say give me another text span, and as it's text I'll just say sign in. I think now we are almost complete. But first of all, we have to make the main axis alignment to main axis alignment dot center. That's the one thing, and then wrap the entire column with center, and also the center with a padding of 16. Now let's see how this looks. So let me just go to the main.dart file. And now, instead of the main page as a home, I'll just replace it with the registration page. And now let me just hot reload this and bring this in here and see how this looks. Amazing. Okay, so far so good, but we have to make some differences. First of all, I'll go to the registration page again and start with the register and give this style. So I'll just say style, text style, and give it a font size of 48, and then font family of free doka, and then font weight of, let's say, font weight dot w600, and also the color of primary. And I have to import the primary from the constants file. That's great. And then I have to make the text align dot center. Okay, and then I have to copy this and give the text align to this text too. Now to the form fields, we have the form field filled with white color, but this does not have a white color. It's transparent. So to give it a white color or any color, we have to go to the note form field, and it's in here. So first we have filled as a boolean, so I have to extract this to say and accept it in the constructor, this dot filled, as well as the fill color. Amazing. And now we can go to the registration page and give this a fill color of white, and also say filled is true. And the same thing for this text field as well as for this text field. And now if we hot reload, look at these text fields, they will turn to white. Okay, we forgot to give the field to these two text fields. Okay, what's wrong with you, bro? Fill color is going to be white. And now a hot reload will do the job. Amazing. And now, what else I want to do with these text fields is, as soon as we start typing, the hint text is removed. And this is not a good user experience. User has to see the hint text here somewhere, okay? So to do that, instead of using the hint text, I'll use another property of the text form field, which is the label text, okay? And let me show you how the label text works. So this is taking a string, so I'll again get it from the constructor, this dot label text, and then assign it in here. And now we can go to the registration page. Instead of the hint text, we can convert this to a label text. And now let me do a hot reload and see how this works. Now the label is showing in here in the top, okay? If we clear the input, then it is showing as a hint to say. Okay, as you can see, this color is different. Okay, this is not consistent with our yellowish color. And that is because if we go to the main.dart file here, we had the seed color to the default color that the project gave us. So we have to replace this with the primary color. And now if I had all of this color should change to some shade of yellow. Amazing. And another problem which is occurring is now that we are focusing these text fields, we cannot scroll through this and they're giving us the overflow error. To solve it, we'll go to the registration page and wrap the center widget with the single child scroll view. And now if I had all of this, then this problem should be gone. Now we can scroll through this page. Amazing. And let me compare it with the design. It's almost the same thing. So now there is no space between the button and this text field, and also the button should be taking the available width of the screen. So to do that, first of all, I have to give the column a cross-axis alignment of cross-axis alignment dot stretch, so everything stretches to the corners. That's one thing. And then before the button we have to put a sized box of height, let's say 12. And also I want to give the button a little more height, so I'll just wrap this with a sized box of height 48. And what about the divider? It is not showing. So to show that, I have to wrap this divider with expanded as well as this one. Nice. And now to stretch these two buttons, we have to again wrap this with expanded widgets. Amazing. And now we have to bring this rich text to the center. So I'll give text align dot center. And to give it different styles, so first of all, I will just introduce a style in the first text span and give it a text style and give it a color of gray, let's say 700. And in the second text span, I'll give it a style of text style and give it a color of primary, so it'll look like a button. And let me just quickly give it a font weight of font weight dot bold. Amazing. And as you can see, the page is not centered, so to make it to the center, what we have to do is change the place of center and single child scroll view. So I'll swap it with parent. Okay, let me see it with the design. So here we have to give it this eye icon. So I'll go to the password form field, and now we have to go to this widget and give it a suffix icon widget. So this takes a widget, so I will again accept it in the constructor and then give it in here. And now I'll go to the registration page, and in the password field I'll give it a suffix icon and give it icon with font awesome icons dot I. And let's see how this looks. Amazing. Now the styling is done, and let's give it the ability to switch between sign in and register mode, as well as show the password in here and unshow it again. So this requires managing the state of this registration page. So as you know, we are using the provider package as our state management solution. So we have to create a change notifier for this page too. So to do that, I'll go to the change notifiers folder and create a file called registration controller.dart. And in here I'll create a class called registration controller and extend it from change notifier. Amazing. And now to keep track of the registration mode and also the sign-in mode, I will just introduce a boolean and call it is register mode and make it true by default. And then I'll introduce a getter as well as the setter. Amazing. And I want to introduce another variable for the password, hidden or not. So I'll say boolean is password hidden and make it true by default. And then introduce a getter as well as setter. So now to use this change notifier, we have to first declare it in the main.dart file and declare it in here. So now we're just providing one change notifier. So to provide multiple providers, we have to use the multi-provider widget and then give it providers. And the first one was going to be this one. And now I can duplicate this one, and in here I'll just give it registration controller. And now we can safely use it. And I'll go to the registration page. So I will wrap the column widget with a selector because we only want to listen to the is register mode in this page, and we can then listen to the is password hidden in here too. Overall, we just want to listen to the is register mode. So I'll just wrap this with selector of registration controller and take a boolean from that. And then as the selector, we will just say from the controller, give me is register mode. And then we have to provide the builder too. It accepts a context that we don't need. And then the is register mode boolean and then the child, and we'll return the column. And now I will say if is register mode, then write register, otherwise sign in. And let me bring this in here to see what are different in the sign in part. And this text is the same, and in the sign in mode we don't have the name part in here. So I will just say if is register mode, then only return these two widgets, otherwise not. Great. And then in here we are having an additional button for forgot password in the sign-in mode. So under the password field and specifically under the sized box, we have to say if is register mode, then again return two widgets, and the first one is going to be a text saying forgot password, give it a style of text style and a color of primary, and then a sized box of, let's say, height 24. And then in here we will say is register mode, then create my account as good, otherwise log me in. And the same in here, I will say is register mode or register with text, otherwise or sign in with. And one final thing is in here, and I'll say is register mode, then already have an account, otherwise don't have an account. Okay, and the final thing is going to be in here, and I will say if it's register mode, sign in, otherwise say register. Okay, let me see how this looks so far. First of all, I'll go to the forget password, and beside the color I'll just give it a font weight of font weight dot bold. And now to toggle these two states, I'll have to go to the text span in where it says sign in or register, and I have to add a tap detector or gesture detector to say. But this is not having the on-tap method, but instead it is having the recognizer, and it takes a tap gesture recognizer. And now to be able to listen to the on-tap events, we have to use the cascade operator and just say on tap like this, and then assign it a callback. And in here we have to toggle the is register mode in the registration controller. So I will say context dot read, and I'll say registration controller, and then I'll say is register mode equals to not is register mode. And now if I hot reload this and then click on the sign in, look at how the page changes. And one thing that is not looking fine is the forgot password. The forgot password should be in the sign in mode, so not in the register mode. So I'll say if not is register mode, then show me the forgot password, otherwise show me nothing. So when I switch to the register mode, then it looks like this. Amazing. So the sign in button is working, and now let me make the I button work. So first of all, to be able to listen to the is password hidden property in the registration controller, we have to wrap the note form field for the password with a selector of registration controller, and then I will say give me a boolean, and in the selector I will say from the controller give me the is password hidden, and as the builder I will say give me the is password hidden, and then return the note form field for the password. And now I will say if it's password hidden, then show me the I icon, otherwise the font awesome icons dot I slash. Great. So now I want to toggle the state by using this icon, so I will wrap it with gesture detector, and in the on tap I will use the registration controller and set the is password hidden. So now as you can see, we're using the registration controller many places in the file, so it's a good idea to declare it as a member of the state class. So I will say let final registration controller, and then in the init state I want to initialize it with context dot read. And now we can use this first of all in here and also in here to toggle the password hidden property. So I'll say is password hidden is going to be not is password hidden. So far so good. So to actually hide and show the password, we have to introduce another property in the note form field, and that is going to be obscure text. So if it is set to false, which is the default value, then the text will be shown in the text field. So I will just say final bool obscure text, and then this dot obscure text is going to be false by default, and then I'll just assign it in here, and then go back to the registration page and then introduce the obscure text, and I'll say is password hidden. So if the password is hidden, then the text will be obscured. So now if I hot reload this, and now if I start typing something and then click on this button, then it is showing the password and again hiding the password. Amazing. So far so good. Now other thing that I want to do is in the full name I want to start with a capital letter. Okay, it's a good user experience to start a name with a capital letter. So to do that, again we have to go to the note form field, and we have to come in here, and I will say text capitalization, and now I have to get this text capitalization and introduce it in here, and then I will say this dot text capitalization is going to be text capitalization dot none by default, and also assign it in here. This is one thing, and another thing is I want to go to the next field after clicking on this button, but now it is just removing the keyboard. So to do this, I will again say text input action, and then get the declaration and introduce it in here, and I will say this dot text input action, and now assign it in here. That's the second thing. The third thing is the type of the text field. For example, in the email address, I want the email address to change the keyboard style too. For example, showing the @ button somewhere in here. So to do that, again, I have to say keyboard type and get the declaration, and then introduce it in here, and then accept it in the constructor, and as well as assign it in here. And now we can use these properties and go to the registration page and start with the full name text field. And in here I will say text capitalization is going to be text capitalization dot, I want to capitalize the sentence, okay? And then for the email address, I will just assign the keyboard type and give it text input type dot email address. And then as the text input action, I want to assign in both the full name and also the email address the text input action and give it text input action dot next. So they go to the next line. Now let's see how this affects our text fields. So first of all, let's start with the full name. As you can see, all the letters are capitalized. So if I start typing name, then the first letter will be capitalized. And if I press the next button, it will go to the next text field. And now the keyboard is proper for the email address. So we can use the @ symbol, something like this. And then when we go to the next part, we're going to the password, and then we're good. Interesting. Now there is one small issue. For example, if I change the register mode to the sign-in mode, now the email address is not showing the email address. It is showing the name, and the password is completely gone. And if we go to the register mode again, then again the email and password is gone. So to solve this error, we can do several approaches. First, give each note form field keys, okay? This could be a way, but a better approach is to use the text editing controller for each field, okay? So I will go in here and just define the text editing controllers for the 3 text fields. So I'll say late final text editing controller, and for the name I'll say name controller, and then duplicate this and say email controller, and then duplicate this again and say password controller. And then we have to initialize these. So I'll say name controller, these 3 things, and we have to get rid of these in the dispose method. So I will say dispose, and I will say name controller dot dispose, and then email controller dot dispose, and password controller dot dispose. And then we have to connect it to each 3 fields through the controller, and I'll say name controller, and the same in here. I'll say email controller, and lastly the password controller. Now if we hot reload this, and now if I write something like foo and then foo@gmail.com and then some password, and then if I just switch to the sign-in mode, then the Gmail and password are in place, and if I go back to the register mode, then the name is also in the place. Amazing. And now the last thing for this video is going to be able to validate the form, okay? So we're not accepting, first of all, empty inputs. And then we have to make sure that the email address is formatted correctly and the password meet different conditions. For example, contains at least 5 characters and contain a lowercase and uppercase letter and also number. So to do this, first of all, we have to make this under a form, so to then be able to validate that. And for form, we have to first define a late final global key of form state and call it, let's say, form key. And then in here I will say form key is going to be global key of form state, and we can safely remove this because we introduced it in here. And now I have to wrap the column with the form widget, and then as the key we'll give it form key. And now by pressing this create my account button, I want to first of all make sure that the form is validated. So to do that, I will just say form key dot current state dot validate. Okay, this will validate this form. So to be able to validate each field, we have to use the validator callback, and in here I will say name. So we're giving the name. So now I want to remove any spaces around the name. So I will say name is equal to name dot trim. Okay, if this is null, then just return an empty string as the name. And now I will say return name dot is empty, then say no name provided, otherwise return null. So this name field is validated. And now for the email address, to validate the email address, I'll just say email, and again I will just make sure that the email does not contain any spaces around that, and then I will say if email is empty, say no email provided, otherwise null. Okay, and the same for the password. So I'll come in here and say validator and then say password. And now I don't want to trim the password because maybe a space around the password is also part of the password, but I only want to make this non-nullable by saying password is equal to password, okay, otherwise an empty string. So if it is a null, then return me an empty string. And now I will say return if password is empty, say no password provided, otherwise null. Okay, this is like a very basic validator for these fields. So let's just check this out and then move to specifics. So I will hot reload this. And now if I just click on the create my account, then the error messages are shown: no name provided, no email provided, and no password provided. And if I start typing in one of these, then the first error is gone, and also the second error will be gone, and then the third error will be gone. But now let's make these validators more stronger. First of all, as you can see, these validators are just polluting our code in this page, so we have to try to move this to a different file. So I'll go to the core folder and create a new file named validator.dart, and I will just say class validator. Okay, and then make the class so that no objects are created by using this special syntax. And now I want to move those validators in here. So first of all, for the name, as we can see, the validator has a declaration something like this. So I'll just copy this and bring it in here. And now I'll just remove this function and replace it with name validator, and then give it a string name. And I have to turn this to a static method. And now we can simply copy these two lines and then just paste it in here. And now simply we can use this method and say validator dot name validator, and we can remove this. Now this is much simpler and cleaner. And the same for the email address. And I'll go in here and just duplicate this. And instead of the name validator, I'll say password validator. And in here, I'll say password. And then go and copy this chunk of code and paste it in here. Okay, this is for email, not password. And now let me see what is the error. We have to bring it inside the validator. Amazing. And now we can just copy this and replace it in here, saying validator dot password validator. And let me call this email validator for now, because this is for email. And then we can duplicate this and make it for password. Change this to password. And now I will go and just copy or even cut this code and paste it in here. And then just replace this whole thing with validator dot password validator. So now the name validator is fine. We don't want to extend it anymore, but for the email, I want to make sure that the email is formatted in the email format. So for that, I have to use the regex, okay, the regular expression to match the pattern. So I will say if email is empty, then say no email provided, but if it is not empty, then check if the regex, okay, the regular expression. So in here, I will put the regex and then I will say has match email. If it is not having the match, so I'll say not regular expression that has match, then I will say password is not in a valid format. And now what is the regex pattern? Let's just declare it in here as a static string, and let's say email pattern is going to be, and I'll just paste this pattern to save time. Bruh. Yeah, I know it is kind of scary, but don't worry about the details of the regular expression, how this works. And if you're curious about that, you can search online. So I will now just say regular expression email pattern. And let me make this const. Great. If now I just hot reload this and press the create my account, now this is saying that password is not a valid format. And now if I add some @ and then blah blah blah.com, then this will be fine. Amazing. And now for the password validator. So to be able to show the different problems that a password might have, for example, if it is not more than 5 characters, if it does not contain a lowercase character, if it does not contain uppercase letter, and if it does not contain a digit, we have to use different approach as opposed to this simple one. The way I will do this is, first of all, create a string error message, and first of all it is going to be an empty string. And now I will say if password dot is empty, then just make the error message no password provided. Else, if it is not an empty password, okay, then I will say if password dot length is less than 6, then error message is going to be password must be at least 6 characters long. And then the next condition is going to be if password, okay, I want to look for the uppercase letters in the password. So I will say dot contains, and in here I will again use the regular expression, and I will say if it contains from A to Z, like lowercase letters. If this not contains these things, then I will say error message, okay, is going to be error message, okay, the previous error message, and then concatenate a new message with that and say password must contain at least one lowercase letter. So this will go to the new line and just append this message. And the same for the uppercase, I will say if not password dot contains the regular expression, and that is going to be from A to Z. Okay, it is looking for the uppercase letters, and it'll say error message and password must contain at least one uppercase letter. And then for the digit, I will say if not password dot contains, okay, regular expression, and that is going to be from 0 to 9. And now I will say error message, password must contain at least one number. And now at the end, I will just return, and I will say if error message dot is not empty, then return the error message. Otherwise, if it is empty, means that there was no problem, then we'll just this line, and that is because we're adding these lines before them. So to remove the line, I'll just say dot trim. Okay, now this will solve the problem. And now if I just click on this, then it will show the error message but with no additional line. So that's it for this video. We have created the registration page, and also we made the form validated. So we can move on to the next step of registering the user with email and password, as well as with Google and Facebook, but that will be for the next videos. And specifically in the next video, we're going to work with email and password authentication. So stay tuned for that, and thank you for watching. And if you're enjoying the content so far, please subscribe to the channel, hit that like button on each video, and share it with your friends who can benefit from the channel. And until the next video, have a good time, keep coding, and stay inspired.